Our Xeno allies didn't understand the concept of pets until they heard a cat purring. The Xenar never understood the concept of pets. To them, all creatures fell into three categories: ally, enemy, or food. The idea of keeping an animal around for companionship was baffling. Humans, however, had an infuriating habit of taking in creatures, big or small, docile or deadly, and making them part of their lives. The Xenar thought this was just another one of humanity's many quirks, until they met Muffins. Muffins was a cat, a tiny fuzzy earth predator with sharp claws, a terrifyingly unpredictable mood, and a complete disregard for authority. When Captain Vasquez brought her aboard the diplomatic vessel Horizon's Edge, the Xenar were deeply disturbed. They watched in horror as the humans willingly coexisted with this volatile killing machine. They flinched every time Muffins swiped at a human's hand, only to hear the ridiculous phrase, "Aw, she's just playing." Then, the unthinkable happened. During an important meeting, Muffins jumped onto Overmind Zathrax's lap, an act so bold it nearly triggered an intergalactic incident. The Xenar leader stiffened, his bioluminescent tendrils quivering in pure terror. The room held its breath. And then, Muffins purred. The deep resonant vibration filled the chamber. Zathrax's massive form trembled, his breathing slowed, his war-hardened eyes blinked in confusion. The sound was soothing. He hesitantly reached out with a clawed appendage. Muffins headbutted him. A creature had just asserted dominance over the overmind of the Xenar Empire, and he accepted it. From that day forward, the Xenar were forced to accept that humans had the ability to tame the untamable. Then came the Morgath incident. A distress call interrupted the newfound peace. A Xenar research station had been studying a creature that had haunted their species for centuries, a Morgath beast. This was not a small, fluffy predator like Muffins. No, the Morgath was an 8-foot-tall obsidian-scaled death machine with serrated claws, multiple rows of razor-sharp teeth, and an appetite for Xenar flesh. And now, one was loose. The alarms blared across Horizon's Edge, security teams scrambled, Xenar warriors raised their weapons, and the humans were way too calm about this. "Okay, so let me get this straight," said Lieutenant Ryan Carter, an Earth xenobiologist with an alarming lack of self-preservation. "The scariest thing in your history got loose on our ship?" "Yes," Zathrax said gravely. "And it eats Xenar?" "Yes." Ryan clapped his hands together. "Neat. Where is it?" Zathrax recoiled. "Why would you want to know where it is?" "So I can go pet it!" The entire Xenar delegation screamed. The Morgath prowled through the ship, snarling, shredding steel panels with its claws. Xenar warriors were shaking, their weapons trembling in their hands. The beast sensed their fear and relished it. Then Ryan walked in. Without armor, without weapons, with a bag of snacks. The Morgath turned its glowing yellow eyes toward him, letting out a guttural growl that made the Xenar nearly faint. Ryan, grinning like a lunatic, knelt down. "Hey, buddy!" The Xenar collectively whispered, "He's dead." Ryan reached into his bag and pulled out a chunk of synthetic meat. "You hungry, big guy?" The Morgath froze. This was new. Usually its prey screamed and ran. No one had ever offered it food before. It cautiously sniffed the offering. The scent was acceptable. The Morgath gently took the meat. The room fell silent. Then Ryan reached forward and scratched the massive beast under the chin. The Morgath purred. The Horizon's Edge shook with the force of it. Overmind Zathrax, witnessing this madness, clutched his chest. "They can tame anything." The Xenar warriors, previously ready to sacrifice themselves, dropped their weapons in shock. One fainted. Another fell to their knees, mumbling, "This is unnatural." Meanwhile, Ryan grinned as the galactic apex predator flopped onto its back, demanding belly rubs. "Who's a good boy?" Ryan cooed, rubbing its massive, armor-plated stomach. The Morgath wagged its massive, spiked tail. Zathrax covered his face. "I need to lie down." Brutus, the name Ryan had lovingly given to the Morgath, became his shadow. It followed him through the halls of Horizon's Edge, towering over everyone, its glowing yellow eyes scanning the corridors with suspicion. It growled at anyone who approached Ryan too aggressively. It was completely submissive to Ryan. But to everyone else? Zathrax approached one day and attempted to pat Brutus on the head. Brutus snarled. Zathrax flinched. Ryan sighed. "Brutus, be nice." Brutus whined and reluctantly let Zathrax pet him. The Overmind withdrew his hand like he had just touched a live grenade. He turned to Ryan, visibly shaken. "How do you do this?" Ryan shrugged. "You just gotta show him some love, you know." The Xenar Council later convened for an emergency meeting. Their conclusion? Humans were not the apex species because of their strength, they were the apex because they could make anything love them. Zathrax rubbed his temples. "We must never let them meet the planetary leviathans." Too late. Ryan was already packing a bag. "Ooh! You guys have sea monsters?" The Xenar screamed again. The Xenar were still recovering from the Morgath fiasco when Ryan Carter, humanity's most reckless xenobiologist, uttered a sentence that sent shockwaves through the Overmind's core. "Ooh, you guys have sea monsters?" Overmind Zathrax clutched his head. "No, absolutely not, you will not." "Where's the nearest ocean?" Ryan interrupted, grinning like an idiot. The Xenar delegation, battle-hardened warriors who had fought in countless wars, looked visibly horrified. "We cannot allow this," Zathrax declared, standing up. "The Leviathans are ancient, merciless beings. Even our most advanced weapons can barely deter them. They are untamable, unreasoning horrors that have ruled our oceans for millennia." Ryan nodded. "Cool, cool. So how do I get there?" Zathrax screamed internally. A full diplomatic emergency lockdown was ordered. The horizon's edge was placed on high alert. All shuttle departures were temporarily suspended. Security personnel were stationed outside Ryan's quarters to ensure he didn't sneak off. Unfortunately, this was not humanity's first rodeo. "Where's the human?" Zathrax demanded, storming into the security wing. The Xenar guards, covered in claw marks, saluted in terror. He escaped!" Zathrax froze. "How?" The head of security shuddered. "He used the small one." A silence fell over the room. Then, in a voice of absolute dread, Zathrax whispered, "Muffins." Ryan had weaponized the cat. The security footage showed it all. The moment the guards blocked Ryan's door, Muffins casually sauntered up and rubbed against their legs. The Xenar, unsure of how to respond, hesitated. That was their mistake. Because Muffins, in true feline fashion, suddenly went feral and attacked their ankles with unrelenting fury. Ryan bolted past them while they were distracted, hijacked a shuttle, and was already en route to Xenar Prime's largest ocean. Zathrax collapsed into a chair, his tendrils twitching in stress. "We are all going to die," he muttered. The Xenar military deployed every available warship to the ocean's edge, setting up defensive perimeters and loading heavy plasma weaponry. Thousands of Xenar troops lined the shores, their eyes trained on the massive, dark shape lurking beneath the water. The Leviathan. It was an ancient terror 100 meters long with glowing abyssal eyes and tentacles that could crush battleships. Its roar shook the heavens. Zathrax watched from the command station, hands trembling. "He is dead," he whispered. "This is the end of the human." Then, from the speakers, a loud, enthusiastic voice rang out. "Who's a big wet noodle? Yes, you are!" The entire Xenar fleet froze. Zathrax's jaw dropped. Through the live feed they saw Ryan Carter standing on the Leviathan's head, scratching its massive hide like it was a common house pet. The Leviathan rumbled. Then, to everyone's horror, it purred. Not a roar, not a screech. A purr so deep and powerful that tsunami waves rippled outward. Thousands of Xenar collapsed on the shore in pure disbelief. A Xenar general witnessing this abomination removed his helmet and threw it into the ocean. "I am retiring!" Zathrax, gripping the table for dear life, felt his mind breaking. "How? How?" he screamed. Through the radio, Ryan's cheerful voice replied, "Turns out big guy just needed some belly rubs. Ain't that right, buddy?" The Leviathan rolled onto its back. The ocean exploded as its titanic tentacles flopped lazily, creating massive tidal waves that would have wiped out coastal cities had it not been for Ryan soothingly patting its giant eyeball. The Xenar watched in silent, existential horror as Ryan Carter, a mere human, had successfully domesticated the single most feared creature in their planetary history. Then, in the final, most humiliating moment of all, Ryan whistled. And the Leviathan wagged its tail. Zathrax promptly fainted. 3 days later, the Xenar Council convened in absolute defeat. The once mighty Leviathans, now responding to the name bubbles. The Morgath beasts, following Ryan around like overgrown puppies. And Muffins, still terrorizing Xenar officials with surprise ankle attacks. The Xenar, a proud warrior race, had lost. Not in war, but in a way far worse. They had been domesticated. Zathrax sat in his throne, eyes hollow, voice empty. We were fools. A Xenar scholar cleared his throat. Perhaps we should consider studying this human taming phenomenon more closely. Zathrax shook his head. No. He stood, staring out the window into the endless void of space. There is only one course of action left, he declared grimly. The council leaned in, awaiting his wisdom. Then in the most broken voice imaginable, Zathrax sighed. We must adopt dogs. The Xenar had lost. Not in war, not in diplomacy, but in the most humiliating way possible. They had been outmatched by a human with a bag of snacks. Their greatest predators, tamed, their ancient nightmares reduced to pets. Their warriors, emotionally devastated by an orange house cat named Muffins. And now Ryan Carter had set his sights on the final frontier. Dragons. Please, for the love of the void, just stop. Zathrax, overmind of the Xenar, had never known true fear until he found himself personally chasing a human across a forbidden planet. He, a being who had commanded wars and led an empire, was now reduced to running after Ryan Carter, waving his arms and screaming in despair. Ryan, no, stop! This is where we draw the line! Ryan, already halfway up a jagged volcanic cliff, grinned over his shoulder. Come on, Zath, what's the worst that could happen? Zathrax stopped running, grabbed a nearby Xenar soldier by the shoulders and shook them violently. Tell him what lives up there, he demanded. The trembling soldier gulped. The Starfang Drakes, Supreme One, the immortal Sky Kings, the unstoppable Fire Lords, the... Oh, hell yeah! Ryan whooped. You guys have space dragons? Zathrax screamed in sheer despair. The Xenar warriors refused to follow. They stood at the base of the cliff, mourning Ryan Carter's inevitable demise. Zathrax, however, was too emotionally damaged to leave. He had seen too much. He had suffered enough. If this human was going to die, he was going to witness it firsthand. Up above, Ryan whistled a cheerful tune, hands in his pockets, as he strolled into the sacred den of the Starfang Drakes. Zathrax watched through his binoculars, sweat pooling beneath his chitin. Then, in an earth-shattering, soul-crushing moment, a massive dragon head emerged from the cave. Its eyes blazed like twin suns, its wings spread wide, eclipsing the sky itself. The Xenar below collapsed to their knees. The great beast opened its mouth, a maw of pure devastation, rows upon rows of world-ending fangs ready to... Hey, big guy! Ryan shouted. The entire planet held its breath. Zathrax prayed to every cosmic entity he could think of. Then, Ryan threw a snack. The Starfang Drake paused. The Xenar watching below lost their minds. No, stop! Do not accept his offering, one warrior shrieked. Fight it! You are the dominator of skies! Another wailed. The dragon sniffed the treat. Then, in a moment that would be recorded in Xenar history as the day their species finally surrendered to fate, the dragon wagged its tail. Zathrax visibly aged. The other Xenar warriors collapsed. Ryan, grinning ear to ear, scratched the dragon's massive snout. Who's a good murder lizard? He cooed. The immortal, all-powerful Sky King purred. Loudly. It rumbled across the planet, shaking mountains, sending rivers rippling. A sound so deeply horrifying in its implications that several Xenar officers simply walked into the ocean and never returned. Zathrax? Zathrax sat down, stared at the sky, and accepted his fate. Ryan Carter, the single most powerful force in the universe, returned to the horizon's edge with his new dragon buddy. The Xenar? Broken. Their scientists no longer studied warfare. They studied belly rub techniques. Their military? Completely useless. The moment an enemy ship approached, all they had to do was broadcast a human saying, "Who's a good boy?" And the opposing fleet surrendered immediately. Overmind Zathrax, once the most feared warlord in the galaxy, now spent his days learning how to properly brush a space dragon. Muffins, of course, remained the undisputed ruler of the diplomatic vessel. And Ryan Carter? He leaned back in his chair, watching his menagerie of cosmic horrors nap peacefully around him. Pause.